So here we are once again with another patch from Direwolf, and this is more like a patch slash nerf. And so far, what I can see from the patch notes, that's exactly what it is. Now, I'd like to say first of all that time and time again, Direwolf has proven that they are listening to the community, and this is something that really excites me. I really like it. Over the last couple of card changes that they have done have been not a direct response to the community, but for the most part have been a lot of community are talking about these changes um, and they're happening. And it might happen in different ways. Um, but one thing I'd like to also say is, a lot of people don't agree with these changes. A lot of people get upset over them. But one thing you got to understand is that Direwolf is allowed to see all the data that we will never see. They are able to gather the analytics, the data, everything they need to make these changes that we will never be able to see or understand. So, though it might be affecting you as a person for that one deck that you really love to play, you got to look at the whole picture as it affects everybody. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and go over some of these changes here. I got a video playing in the background. I don't know how I'm going to do this because I can't overlay in Windows Movie Maker. So, yeah, you guys will at least be able to see um, the cards. So that's all that matters. So the first change that's going on here is Crystal Tower Crafter. Now this is a card that I have I've talked about in the past. And one of my ideas was actually taking the card and making it to where it was still the same, still a 2 cost 2/2, but it when you played an action, it only buffed your attack, not your health. That way, the card would still be vulnerable to most removal. Most people would have a chance to get rid of this card. It wouldn't be too overpowered. So, in other words, you start off 2/2, you play an action, you're 3/2, and then 4/2, and then 5/2, and so on and so on. Um, but looks like here, what Direwolf thought to do was actually knock this down to a 1/1, which I think is a good change. I think it'll make it a little bit easier to contest, but it's not such a huge change to where it just breaks the card. You think about playing this out on a turn 2 with the Wardcraft, it brings it back up to with a Wardcrafter, or not a Wardcrafter, the 0 cost Ward card. Brings it up to back to a 2/2, and it has Ward. Um, so you're really still going to be hard pressed to remove this card. Most people, when they play this, they have an action to follow up, and even and now that's going to have to be the case because if you play this without any follow up action, it's almost certainly going to get removed or have a chance to get removed. Either way, I think this is a good change, and I agree with Direwolf. I don't 100% agree with it, but I do think it's a good change. Okay, moving on to the second card, Dune Smuggler. So Dune Smuggler and Dune Stalker, I'll put them both up on the screen one after another here. But let's talk about Dune Smuggler first. This is a change that I did not see coming, although I really agree with it. And after you read the card, it makes sense, right? So before, when you play Dune Smuggler, you move a creature to the other lane, and it gives it 1/1, which is great. But it didn't matter where you put the Dune Smuggler. Say you had a creature in the Shadow Lane, and and it was Darren Cutpurse, and you have nothing in the field lane, which wouldn't matter. Somebody throws up a guard in the Shadow Lane to contest the Cutpurse, right? Well, you then will throw Dune Smuggler in the field lane and move Cutpurse over to the field lane with it. So then you would have that much more board presence in the field lane, right? So now what they're saying is you move another friendly creature in this lane. So I'm assuming what that means is you have to throw Dune Smuggler. You basically have to switch it out with Daring Cutpurse or whatever other card there is. So if you have Daring Cutpurse in the Shadow Lane, you have to throw Dune Smuggler in the Shadow Lane to move the Dune Smuggler over to the field lane, which I really like that. I think that's a great change, and it kind of balances this card a little bit. Because it is pretty annoying. It's pretty it can be pretty heartbreaking when that happens to you. It's not game breaking, you know. I mean, there's pretty you can. When it happens to me, I'm able to deal with it. But I do like this change in the mechanic. I think that it makes the lane changing cards a little bit less OP. The fact that you essentially just have to switch that card out in that lane. You're trading it. You're moving the card that you want to keep that is more valuable. And so yeah, giving the opponent a little bit better chance to trade more favor. I can't talk. I mean, guys, Jesus. So, anyways, whatever. Dune Stalker is the same gig. It's just it's a different card, but the same effect. Uh, besides the 1/1, right? Okay. So, moving on here. Pillaging Tribute. So, a lot of people are probably going to be very upset about this card. This goes back to what I said at the beginning of the video. Look at the whole picture of the game, and we're thinking about the state of the game so like right now so far. There's stuff coming into this game that we don't know about that Direwolf does know about. So if they have something coming down the line that is going to make cards like this even more overpowering, and they don't want that, it makes sense then, right? Um, and one thing I will say about Pillaging Tribute is when you're playing against a control deck and they're sustaining, right? They're just answering everything, and you're going face, and you haven't even you got them down to like 20 health or 15 health, whatever, and you're just burning your deck. They throw down a Pillaging Tribune, and they got, you know, 10 damage or 15 damage or whatever in one of the lanes. Um, that instantly is basically an instant concede. You can't come back from that most of the time. Um, And for a card that has an effect for one turn, I think that's a little bit overpowering. So I agree with this change, making it to where you have to choose what creature that you want to get that drain on for that turn. It makes it a little bit more, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Um, you have to think about it a little bit more when you're setting up your board to play against that aggro matchup. Um, I agree with it. I know a lot of people probably don't, but whatever. So the other change is on kind of the same plane here is Snakejuice Necklace. Now, however, I can't agree with all these changes, right? This is one change I don't agree with, and I'll explain why. I think that they're trying to do the same thing here, and they must have something coming down the line that is going to affect these in a negative way for their game. So that's why they're changing them, I think. But Snakejuice Necklace is an item, right? And it's like any other item in the game. When you apply it to a creature, it stays there. It's permanent unless you silence that creature or kill it, right? Um, so I think them taking this card and basically saying it's only for the turn, and that's what you can see on the screen there. It gives the wielder drain for that turn only. So the item goes away after that. So I don't agree with this change. I think it's a little bit too drastic. Um, Although it still does provide that potential comeback mechanic that the game has. It still does provide that sustainability. If you're playing against an aggro deck and you use your Hist Grove, which we'll be talking about later, and you got an 8/8 on the board. You slap this on it. It's 9/9 drain. I do think that having that on there, and your opponent has wasted all resources to try to win the game and get you down to 10 health or whatever it is, and all of a sudden you got a 9/9 drain creature on the board for God knows how many turns, because then you're gonna have to switch game around and try to get rid of that card before you go back swinging face. So I I don't like it, but I kind of agree with it. Let's just say that I think it's a good change for the state of the game, but I don't like the change. So moving on here, let's look at Slaughterfish spawning. So uh, I didn't think anything was wrong with this card. Um, so I kind of I don't really agree, and I don't understand why the change is here. the cards seem fine to me for 3 costs, 2/1/1s. Most of the time, you're able to deal with these cards. Yeah, they might get out of control a little bit, but you got to think that it's only the attack that's getting buffed. It always stays at 1 health, so super easy to remove. Um, Changing it to a 4 cost, I don't think breaks it, but it makes it a little bit, a little bit less playable. Maybe I'm not too sure about this change, but there's not much to say here really. It just it didn't change the buff on it. It's still a +2/0 at the start of your turn. So, but let's move on to the next card here. So, Soul Rest Marshal. Um, this is a change that I wanted to see coming, but not in this way. What they did was, all they did was basically increase the cost. Um, the text is still the same. If you have more health than your opponent, the next card you play this turn costs 6 less. That has changed. It's not 5 less anymore. It's 6 less. So they've kind of buffed it, but not really, right? Is that what it seems like to you guys? I can't. Yeah. So it used to be 5 less. Now it's 6 less. I think it started back in the day as 6. I can't remember, but making it a 6 cost, I guess, could really change things around. I was really hoping they made it to where Soul Rest would not be able to trigger itself, because that is just that's game breaking to me. When you have a guy that you're playing, you're managing the board, you're making favorable trades, you're an even matchup, and next thing you know, somebody Soul Rest into uh, Moonlight Werebat or Cliff Racer or Jarl or whatever. You play 3 cards in one turn on turn 5. Even on turn 6, that's insane. Let's think about it. If you get super lucky, do you Soul Rest into Soul Rest into Soul Rest into whatever? You just played 4 cards. So um, I don't think this change is going to help too much. I think it is a step in the right direction, but I think the card's still going to be super playable and still super overpowered. Yeah. So um, not much more to say about that. That's kind of upsetting, actually. I was really hoping that they would nerf it in a different way. So moving on here, let's go to the very last change that we see here, which is Hist Grove. This change I actually like because it makes sense. I think it actually wasn't working as intended to begin with. The fact that you're, above 15 Magicka and you throw this card out and instantly activates without giving your opponent a chance to remove it at all, um, I think is not the way it was intended, if you ask me. And that's exactly what they did. All they did was change it to where at the start of your turn, if you have 15 Magicka or more, you sacrifice it to summon a 8/8 in each lane. I'm glad they didn't change the effect that it does, because it is fun and it makes Ramp Scout a thing, or a better thing. But the fact that they play this and it does not activate till their next turn, it makes it to where people playing against them in the late game actually stand a chance. Because if you get to a late game with the right cards with Scout, you're not coming back. Especially if you have Snakejuice Necklace, like we talked about earlier. Um, you're really hard pressed to come back and win the game. Um, most people, when you're playing against Scout, you want to save that, your support removal cards, and if somebody's stupid enough to play it before turn 15, well, you get to remove it. You have plenty of time to think about it and remove it. Um, but in late game, you're kind of screwed. It doesn't really matter. So I really like this change, and I really agree with this and what they're doing, and I'm excited about it. I think Ramp Scout's still playable totally. Um, it'll really make people think about how they're going to react to the support card while they're playing against Scout or using their support removal cards. So yeah, that's about it, guys. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 changes. Really excited about this. As said before, I think Direwolf does a very good job about listening to the community and providing a better game for people to play in the future. They don't just ignore, and do what they want. They really listen to the community and make changes that are necessary. So I'm really excited. Let me know if you know what cards you liked, what cards you didn't like. If you agree, if you disagree, if you're just plain pissed off. Let me know in the comments. Like and subscribe. And that's about it, guys. Until next time, good luck and have fun.